You're listening to the winning literary show, Off the Shelf Books Talk Radio, live with host Denise Turney, author of the books Long Walk Up, Portia, Love Pour Over Me, Spiral, Love Has Many Faces, and Rosetta's Great Hope. Turn up your dial and get ready for a blast of feature author interviews, 411 on book festivals, writing conferences, and so much more. Ready? Let's go.
Welcome to Off the Shelf Books on this Saturday morning, April the 26th. This is the last Saturday in April, and this is Indie Bookstore Day. And I'm not sure if this is global or just in the United States, but the last Saturday in April is Indie Bookstore Day, so I encourage you to get out. I plan to hit the bookstore today myself, to get out and support an indie bookstore, whether you do it online. I know there's bookshop.org. Detroit Book City has things going on. You got Uncle Bobby's in Philadelphia. There's so many different independent bookstores that you can support either online or offline. And a lot of them are having special events today as well. So this is just one day out of the year. We know we want to always support indie bookstores and indie authors, etc. They bring such wonderful stories that we might not know about if it wasn't for them. And another thing I love about indie bookstores, they are very connected to the community. They will have community events and support the community in ways that only indie bookstores and small businesses really do. The people who own their businesses live in the communities where their indie bookstores operate. So hopefully I encourage you to get out and explore some new books with other other people who support indie bookstores. And now before I go any further and we introduce today's guest, I always like to start the show with a quote. And this quote is by Nelson Mandela, and it always seems impossible until it's done. And I love that quote. When you try to do something or you read history books, people told the Beatles they would never get out the front gate. They've told so many people that different things could not happen. Just don't believe the naysayers. Get out there and make it happen. It always seems impossible until it's done. And again, that quote is by Nelson Mandela. To our loyal listeners, I have to always stop and say thank you, thank you, thank you. We have been on the air for 18 years. It's just amazing to me. It's just amazing. And then if this is your first time tuning in to Off the Shelf Books, I say welcome, welcome, welcome. And we have a wonderful author on deck for you today. And we're so excited to introduce her to you. But before I do, I want to encourage you or ask you, there's so much that goes on in our lives. Our lives, the longer we're here, they just fill up with stuff and our minds. And if we're not careful and we don't let whatever comes up during the day go, we could end up loaded over several years with things we're still stewing over. We haven't processed. We haven't worked through it mentally, emotionally, and it's maybe even starting to show up in our body because we're carrying way too much from the past, way too much. Then it's time to heal. So I encourage you. This is a book with short poetry, short writings, things that you can lower your defenses. You don't have to be defensive reading it. It's like a real, again, poetic writings, but they are written to help you to heal and almost to your unawares. And the title of the book is Heal Gorgeous, Wisdom Within You Knows the Way. And if this is something that you really value yourself and you want to make sure you're not carrying these extra luggage of the past into the next day and the next day, and every day you're picking up more stuff. And after 10, 20 years, you're feeling really weighed down. I encourage you to get a copy of Heal Gorgeous, Wisdom Within You Knows the Way by yours truly, Denise Turney. You can get it in an ebook, you can get it in print, and you can get it in audiobook. And please, again, I encourage you to support indie bookstores. And now let us go and meet our very special off-the-shelf guest. And today's off the shelf guest is Lori Keesey. If I misspelled her name, I hope she corrects me. And Lori has a long writing career, developing copy for newspapers and regional and trade magazines. And she has put in more than 40 years of copywriting. And additionally, for 20 years, Lori worked for NASA in public outreach. She earned her Bachelor of Science in Journalism from the University of Maryland, College Park, and Lori is the author of the books Always Think of Me. And short stories she has written and published include The Note and Robert's Prayer. I enjoyed visiting her website when I'm researching for the guest interviews. I'm always intrigued by different things I discover during my research on her website and beyond. But I encourage you, I think you will enjoy visiting her website. To encourage you to check Lori out online at lorikeesey.com. LORIKEESEY.com. And again, that is LORIKEESEY.com. We are just honored to have Lori Keesey join us on Off the Shelf Books this morning. Welcome to Off the Shelf, Lori.
Thank you, Denise, and thanks for inviting me on. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, I'm just so excited to have you here with us. So, and I know you've listened to prior shows, and thank you for that. So, you know how the show kicks off. Can you tell off the shelf listeners where you grew up, Lori, and what life was like for you growing up?
Oh my goodness. I grew up in a little place called Damascus, Maryland. It's in Montgomery County, Maryland, which is one of the DC suburban counties, but I didn't grow up in suburbia. I grew up in the country. So when I was growing up, the kids were in agriculture. You know, the fairs were big. It was so rural. And I remember I was, I don't know, maybe 5 when Damascus got its first stoplight, and it actually made the DC news because it was such a small, out of the way place, formerly known as Black Ankle when it first started, because people always walked around with went barefoot and their feet were dirty. So,
Wow.
it was, you know what? I had a good childhood. I mean, it was small town with small town ideals. People knew one another. Fathers belonged to their various Rotary clubs. My dad was, church. We just, and my friends, my best friends are still kids I met when I was in school.
Oh, my
So
goodness.
yeah, it's kind of unusual in that sense. I know a lot of folks who, they had a best friend and they don't know what happened to that person. Well, I know what happened to my girls. They're still around.
Did you have brothers and sisters, or
I
were you an only child?
Oh no, I have 2 sisters and a baby brother, and my little brother, it was almost like a separate family because I'm 12 years older than he is. My sister is 14. Yeah, so when he was growing up, we were moving out. I was in
Oh,
college.
okay.
Yeah, so it was very, very, very different for him. And and at that point, my parents had more money. So he would
Mm.
get stuff we would have never gotten.
Oh my gosh. And you know what? You are the third guest, and we've had hundreds on Off the Shelf. You're the third guest. People from all over the world have come on the show. They're the third who said that they grew up in a town with either one traffic light or no more than 2 or 3. And the first time somebody came on and said that, I said, "No way." And they said, "Yes." I couldn't believe it. They said,
Well,
"Yes." And so,
I'm sorry, I interrupted.
no, no, no,
Um,
go ahead.
Well, we had dirt roads too. I mean, I remember when they finally paved some of these dirt roads. It was incredible. It really, really, really was a small town. And I remember our high school was little, and it was compared with the high schools, what they would call down county, with the richer suburbs, we got nothing in terms of resources. I'll never forget. We decided to protest the county school board. And I remember one of the signs reading, and which today it just, I don't know, it surprised me by its cleverness. Paul could find Damascus. Why can't you? And now I thought that was pretty clever. I'm thinking, did some kid come up with that? I doubt it.
Yeah. Oh, so how many people? I'm just trying to in context, and then as we talk about your books, because I do believe, as an author myself, our childhood. I mean, there's no way to separate yourself from whatever it is you create. But how many people were in the town? And I never thought of Maryland as having any. I always see it as urban city. I never think of it. Yeah. So how many people in the town where you grew up?
I don't know what the population was, but my graduating class was, I think, 180 kids.
Okay.
So, yeah, and furthermore, it wasn't just Damascus proper. We were pulling in kids from rural communities surrounding Damascus. So there was like Clarksburg and, parts of Germantown and parts of rural Gaithersburg that would be pulled into our school. So it was very, I'm not kidding. Now it's totally different. Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Oh, it's just exploded. Everything has exploded, around the DC suburbs. So it's very different. I'll never forget. I was hadn't been on this road. I was still living in the area at the time. I since have moved to Tennessee. And I was visiting a girlfriend, and you know how you'll zone out and you're on autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
And I came to, and I did not know where I was because the roads have been completely changed.
Oh,
and
wow.
You know how that happens? And, the old landmarks are gone.
Yes.
So it's changed a lot.
I'm gonna research that. Now you got me interested. Now, as a kid, Lori, what did you want to be when you grew up? What did you dream of becoming?
A writer. I knew when I first started to write, when I'm learning my letters and learning how to spell and to read, that I wanted to be a writer. And so I'd go visit my Nana and Poppy in Pennsylvania, 2 weeks every summer. And my Poppy was a drugstore. He was a druggist. So it was an old Rexall store. And he would compound his own drugs. So he'd have the mortar and pestle, and he's doing all this stuff. And then he'd have this big roll of paper. It was, I don't know, it was like parchment paper. And he'd wrap up the drugs in this paper like little gifts. Anyway, so my cousin and I would we'd roll out the paper. We would fold it up into pages, scotch tape it, and then write and illustrate our little stories. That's what we did for fun. I know, kind of geeky, huh? But that's what we did.
Cool. So I know you also worked in journalism and as a freelance writer for many years.
Yes.
In what ways is, from your perspective, in what ways is journalism writing different from writing fiction?
Oh my goodness, it's dramatically different. A good journalist does not present his or her opinion. Okay. And in fiction writing, you're constantly injecting your opinion through the characters' behaviors, the characters' thoughts, that sort of thing. The writing is also more concise. I think Hemingway did a good job because he started out as a journalist, and his fiction, it's very concise. It's very, shorter sentences. In journalism, you don't have all these flowery phrases, describing vegetation, for example. You just don't go there. Your job is to report whatever that person is saying, whatever has happened, who, what, where, why, and when. So that is the biggest difference, I think. And when I started writing, when I wrote this novel, Always Think of Me, I had to get out of that mindset, where I could take more liberties with describing the external environment, what was going on, the birds and, whatever's going on, hearing the rain or whatever it is. So that was what I had to, I struggled with that.
I
And
was going. Go ahead.
I'm not, some authors do a tremendous job of, I don't know, their comparisons, their similes, that kind of thing. It was like, and I'm just not a flowery person. I struggle with that. Describing some, I don't know, comparing an emotion with what's going on externally. I do it, but boy, oh boy, it takes a long time for me. And I'm sure other authors just zip it out. But
I
you know
was
what I'm
going to
saying?
ask you. I was going to ask you how has working as a journalist impacted your novel writing. I know you just said that one. How then would you say? And you mentioned Hemingway has working as a journalist helped you, strengthened your novel writing.
Well, I think at least with this first book, a lot of it, not all of it, it's not autobiographical, but a lot of it involves events that really happened. So it is kind of reportage. I am reporting what happened with, in addition to more of the fiction writing flair. But I find it easiest, to use your own experiences. And I'm sure that's with a lot of writers, but I almost see it as journalism in the sense that I'm reporting something that really did happen.
Interesting, interesting. Now, when it comes to fiction, when you first started writing, first of all, when you knew you wanted to be a writer, did you imagine yourself as a novelist or as
Well,
a journalist?
both. Both. And I started out as a newspaper reporter and then, did these various things. Ended up, started out in Delaware after college, went to South Carolina, went back to the DC area, and worked for McGraw-Hill. That was not a fun job because I was covering coal mining regulations. That was really boring. That was so boring. I thought, oh my gosh, if I don't get out of here, I'm going to die. And then I got pregnant, had kids, and, decided, well, I think I'm going to go into freelance. And I started that in 1993. And I did a lot of different types of writing, marketing stuff, as well as articles that are aimed to influence, that kind of, I did a lot. So, and I think I'm babbling here, Denise, and am I answering your question?
Yes, you are. You are. So, what inspired you to write Always Think of Me?
Well, there's a long, sort of sad story involved there. The main character his name is TC, and he is based on my son, my oldest son, and my oldest son died. And I had to write this. And there was always this idea that I wanted to be a novelist ever since I was in the 10th grade. But I never had the story. And unfortunately, this became the basis of a story. Not that I'm not, there are no, I'm not trying to say that, because he died, necessarily that's in the novel, but the main character is based on my son, his personality. And I had to work through his death. And this was my way of working through his death because he died at 33. And, my husband and I we're, if you've ever had your heart broken from a first love, or, the person you absolutely love scorns you or whatever, that broken heart, that's what you feel, but it's a million times worse when this happens. And I had to write this. I had to write a story based on him in the hope. And my hope was that people would read this story, fall in love with this character in spite of all of his flaws, and maybe see themselves in him. That was my aim. I really wanted to share his personality with others.
Where and when, bless you, Lori, where and when does the story take place? Always Think of Me.
The story is contemporary. It's like now. But there are different scenes in the book. There's the scene 5 minutes from my house at the river. There's there's a outdoor music festival, which there's a huge music festival in Tennessee. I don't name the festival, but I use that festival as the basis of where this festival takes place. Also Atlanta, Georgia. So
Okay.
it takes place. Also, there's in a little town south of Atlanta. A small town. So there are like 4 different areas where this book takes place.
Now, is this a work of fiction? And now
Yes.
listening to you, it is.
Yes.
Can you give
Yes.
us a brief overview of the story? And then I have other questions I want to ask you about the book.
Sure. This is an uncommon love story. It's not a romance novel. It's a love story about, friendship and do-overs and people who are searching their real purpose in life. And that's what this book is about. Everyone has a purpose, but unfortunately, sometimes you lose sight of what your purpose is or you don't know. And then you're left kind of wandering around. And that's what this story is about. That's the overarching theme.
When you said that, and I think that's so important because that applies as a universal thing. And I've met people myself who were in their 40s and older who told me they had no idea what their purpose was. They didn't have a clue, and they wish
Yeah.
they had known, but they just did not have a clue. Do you touch on that in a way? And always think of me where readers enjoying a story, but they can come away themselves with a kind of a aha a little bit that helps them maybe figure that out. Although that might not have been your intent for writing it, is that something you think a reader could take away from the story?
Well, some of my readers have told me it was a type of book that that they can't forget. They cannot forget it because of some of the messages in that. I hope so. Another thing that was happening when I started writing this, there was just this huge uptick in suicides among younger people. And I'm thinking, this is breaking my heart. My son died accidentally. And these people are purposely taking their lives. And it breaks my heart because I do believe everyone has a purpose. People are not random. They were put here for a specific job, a job that only they can do. And if you kill yourself, you're denying someone else. Your purpose might be, to do, say this to this person. It might be so small and seemingly inconsequential, but you could be helping someone else. It's like we're kind of meshed, like a tapestry. You pull one thread, the whole picture unravels. So,
Interesting. Yes.
that's kind of what my philosophy is. I truly believe we have a purpose.
Yes. Yes. Can you interest? And you say you call him TC, but it's Tyrus Cal. Can you tell us what he's like for our listeners who've never read the story? Always think
Okay.
of me. What's he like, and what drives him? What's really motivating and driving him?
He doesn't understand his purpose, and he masks his insecurities by this over the top persona. He is funny. He's short for a man. He's a little overweight. He drinks a lot of beer. He is a amateur comedian. He does the open mic events in town. So he meets this girl, Jenny, at this outdoor music festival, and how they met sets the stage for later on. Just the whole thing. And he's just amusing. He's sweet. He listens to people. He doesn't just talk about himself, and he couldn't care less. He's a slob. He dresses sloppy. Cause he's camping out this outdoor festival. The tent is a wreck. Trash is everywhere. And Ginny is a neatnik. And for reasons that the reader finds out in the book, she is obsessed. It's something she can control the mess around her. So she's constantly cleaning up after him. So, but these two people couldn't have been more different. But there's a I don't know, soulmate sort of thing. He drags her out of her shell. She's very shy, reticent because she's wary of people because of trauma that happened in her life. And TC, he's a goofball. He really is a goofball. He loves to dance and sing and carry on, but he's never really experienced the trauma that she has. In fact, he hasn't. His life was relatively easy. He had, two parents. He had this huge extended family. And because of his outgoing nature and because he's so funny, he had a gazillion friends. So life wasn't that difficult for him.
So how old are Tyrus and Jenny at the start of when the book opens? And what is the opening scene in Always Think of Me?
The opening scene is at the river. And I can, if you don't mind, it's a prologue and I have the book in front of me. If you don't mind, I'll just read.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Would love it.
Okay, hold on. I got to get to the page. Here he goes. Here we go. Georgie, my brindled goofball of a canine, hated the river. Despite my cajoling, he'd dig in his paws and pull against his leash. Treats or no treats, he wouldn't go into the water. I probably should have followed his example because the river deceived me. It's there where my story begins or ends depending on your point of view and sets the stage for my unexpected otherworldly reunion with Ginny, a special woman I fell for a year ago.
Great beginning. Thank you for reading that. Do enjoy that. So you said
She's a few years younger than TC. He's in his early 30s. He's a bachelor.
Okay.
He's a down and out real estate guy. He doesn't know what he's supposed to do with his life, so he bounces around from thing to thing, and nothing ever truly satisfies him.
But he's in real estate.
He's in real estate.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep.
And he's a few years.
She's a nurse, and she's a nurse.
What? So she's shy. You said. What else can you tell us about Jenny? And you said soulmates, but what would attract them? He's a funny guy. Is he kind of wanting to take care of her? If she seems shy, is he want to? Does he look at her like, I want to take care of you?
Well, for one thing, she's drop dead gorgeous. He's a guy, and he's immediately attracted by her appearance. Also, there's something about her that stands out, and that is she doesn't understand how beautiful she really is, or you know how some people are always constantly taking selfies and kind of this self-absorbed sort of thing, almost narcissistic. She's not like that. She completely does not understand how attractive she is. She doesn't have multiple piercings. She does not have tattoos. It's almost like she's a girl from a different era. And that's what appeals to TC. And TC has a sailor's mouth. So she doesn't curse. She's a straight girl. I mean, she's also very faithful. And he is on the fence about faith or religion. Maybe let's call it religion. Religion ticks him off.
Can you describe their relationship? And it sounds like from the beginning they had broken up.
Well, you have to read the book, but they never get together. They fall for one another. I mean, he's completely, and through the story is told in first person perspective with different chapters, the TC chapters, the Ginny chapters. So you get a better sense of what's going through their minds as they react to what's going on at the music festival or later on in Atlanta. They don't break up because they never got together. She's engaged. She's gotten herself hitched to this man, and his name is Jacob. And Jacob is not a nice guy.
Oh.
He's very wealthy, he's narcissistic. And he only cares about himself.
Jacob and Tyrus are nothing alike.
It
sounds like.
Oh, totally different. I mean, in every way. Tyrus is short. This Jacob guy is tall. He has movie star good looks. He's perfectly coiffed. His hair's in place. He wouldn't be caught dead in cargo shorts and some stupid Hawaiian shirt. that's all stained from barbecue, you know?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Interesting that she's attracted to two very different men. That's intriguing as a reader when I think about Always Think of Me. Now, would you describe the book Always Think of Me as a contemporary love story? And if so, why?
Yes, I label as a women's fiction, contemporary women's fiction, and it is a love story. But it's interesting. I've had some men read it, and I wrote it for women. But it's funny. I've had a lot of men. In fact, a friend of mine just finished reading the book the other day, and he said I could totally relate to that TC character. I've had a
Okay.
lot of men tell me that I could relate to that guy. Kind of like unrequited love. Because when TC and Ginny separate, he's feeling horrible. He feels rejected. And she's unsure. She's unsure. Did I make a mistake? And she finds out.
You know what? This made me think about this super hit book movie by Nicholas Sparks, I think, The
Oh,
Notebook. That
yes.
popped into my head. Soon as
Yes.
I'm listening to you, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, this is putting me in mind. It popped into my head. Now, can you talked about Jacob, who Jenny is engaged to. Can you introduce us to a few other major and minor characters in the story who helped to move the story forward?
Okay. There's a little character. Her name's Amy, and she's she's from East Tennessee, and she has the twangy accent. She's a little hoot. I loved her. I loved her because she's little, but she's brassy. And she just runs her mouth, and she's hilarious. I loved her. There's another character, Mo and Bear. These folks are chefs, and, they're also at the outdoor festival, and they help move the story along a little bit. And then, of course, Granny Smith. That is Ginny's grandmother, the woman who raised Ginny. And she is a little doll baby. Granny
Okay.
Smith. And you don't see her, but through Ginny's stories about her grandmother, you learn more about her character and the big influence that this woman had on Ginny's life because of the trauma that she experienced when she was just little.
Oh, now as readers read, always think of me, and it's something I do love about fiction. Is there any elements of historical fiction in here where a reader has maybe never been to Atlanta, or they haven't been to the other areas where the story takes place? Would they be able to feel like they had learned something historically about these areas, or even feel like some authors, the way they write, I feel like I'm there? Would they actually feel like they're actually there, and it's based on something factual about the area? Is that the way it's written in part about the different locations that they're in?
Well, at the music festival, I had a number of people. I'll be honest, I've never been to an outdoor music festival, never. But I did a whole bunch of research and talked to a whole bunch of people who go to these events regularly. And, they said, you nailed the outdoor festival. You
Wow.
nailed it. And just doing a lot of research, looking at photos, yeah, so I think so. I think that, yeah, people would be there. And also along the river how the book starts. Movie would be awesome, wouldn't it?
Yeah, see, there you go. There you go. You go follow the Notebook. You go, there you go. There you go.
Oh man, that'd be awesome.
Yes.
Anyway, so I think so. To answer your question, I think people could put themselves, and the neighborhood in Atlanta is a very posh neighborhood in Atlanta. It's super expensive.
Is it in Buckhead?
It's in that general vicinity. What do they
Okay.
call it? Tuxedo Park.
Okay. Okay. That I haven't heard. I've no Buckhead, but I haven't heard yeah, you gotta have
Buckhead's,
some money to live in
yeah.
that area.
Oh
Yeah.
yes, and I think Tuxedo Park is a part of, but don't, I'm just talking off the top here, but I think that's what northwestern section of the city or something. I can't remember. Anyway, yeah.
Okay, now let's explore some of your, and I will say this before we move on. This is one thing I love about, and I wish maybe before sometimes when I've stumbled across some books that I just absolutely loved.
Hmm.
And I'm like, oh my God, never heard of the author or the book. But when you listen to like an author interview, or if I'm at a book festival and the author's on a panel or they're being asked questions about their story, when you hear the inner workings, the inner makings, the inspiration behind the story, it always makes the story to me that much more interesting.
Hmm.
More than you could ever put in a book description.
Hmm. Hmm. I
Now,
agree.
shifting just a bit, want to explore some of your short stories, and short stories are kind of taking off a little bit. You can do either write them and put them in magazines and journals and get more exposure as an author, or you can create enough short stories to create like a compilation of a book of them
Right.
and share your short stories that way. So can you just introduce us to and give us an overview? And oh, before I ask you this, did you start writing short stories first or novels?
Um, I guess it started concurrently.
Okay.
I wrote those short stories as giveaways to try to build my platform.
Ah, okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Can you give us an overview of the note?
The Note, that is based on a true story. Again, my journalistic background. And it's about a young girl. Her name is Dot. And Dot is not very pretty. And her whole world is rocked when her mother discovers the note that was
Mm,
hidden in Dot's pocket. There too, it is a traumatic incident that robs Dot of her innocence
mhm.
completely. It's a coming of age story and it's based on fact.
Oh,
Based on my grandmother and her story.
oh
And
my God.
that took place in the 20s. So, when I wrote that, I try to remain true to the cars, the houses. It's in Pennsylvania, the industrial city where she is, dealing with the outcome of her loss of innocence and that kind of thing.
Now, did you is the I guess the beginning of this story, did you come across a note that your grandmother had written? And that's what I've had authors who say they came across something their father wrote. They came across some writings of a parent, and that's where they turned it into a book. Did you come across the note?
I did not come across the note. It was a part of a court hearing. It was evidence in a
Oh,
court hearing. Yeah. And my cousin provided me with the contents of that note.
oh my God.
She's our family genealogist and she has reams of information and she's the one who provided me with that.
Interest. Are there any plans? This sounds like it could be a novel.
Well, it's funny. I have just finished it's not finished. It's going through the editing phase, a sequel to Always Think of Me. And so I'm thinking, okay, what do I want to do next? And I was really thinking about, using the note as the underlying problem with the third book I'll write, but I'll bring it up to date and use some of my own experiences growing up. You see, because
That
there has to be that compelling moment, that event that's driving the entire story, driving the characters. And I couldn't think of anything, but then I thought, what about that? That could do it because that stuff happens all the time, you know?
Wow, that the note. Oh my God, for somebody to, that would just be you're cleaning out some your family stuff in an
Oh,
attic, and you come across something, either a picture, a writing, or something, and
yeah,
it literally changes your life, and then
yeah,
you're going back trying to put the pieces together. That
yeah,
actually happens. It's very rare, but these things actually happen. As strange as it sounds, and it's life changing. I have you. You said you did started writing short stories to try to build your audience
hmm,
to connect with and build your readership. How have you found that to be? And I ask questions for our listeners who themselves are authors. Have you found that to be effective at getting out, connecting with more readers?
I think initially it did, but those stories have been available for a long time now. So I'm not sure how effective it is now. And, the writers who are listening, they know as well as I do that it's not easy, building a platform or an audience. There are so many different voices out there. And Denise, maybe you found that to be as true as well, but it's hard work.
It
It's
is,
not easy.
and there's more and more books being published.
Oh yeah.
Definitely than when I started. What
Hmm.
is the genesis of the story Robert's Prayer?
Again, that's based on a true story. And,
Mm.
and Robert, he's based on my, great, my great grandfather. Never met him, but my family, they're storytellers. And, if you would listen, they would tell you everything about your history, your family history, if you wanted to listen. And I like these stories. So I listened, and it's based on him and my, the Arthur character is based on my grandfather who died in 1944, and also, my grandmother who lost her mind.
Mm.
And and the other two characters in that little story, one is based on my father and one is based on my aunt. And then the, other character, Miriam, is based on my grandmother. And
Interesting.
that
I was
stuff
gonna.
all happened, but
I
it's
was.
fiction. It's fiction because I took total liberty in terms of, but this thing happened and it's always intrigued me when my grandmother told me about what happened to my grandfather and how his parents reacted to that. And it was mind blowing. It's almost like you realize as a little kid, man, adults don't have, we always look up to adults when we're little. We think, oh, I can't wait to be I get to choose for myself. But honestly, when you're an adult, you'd rather be a kid so you didn't have to make these decisions.
Yeah. Now is Robert running from someone or something? Uh,
He's not, no, he's trying to preserve his broken family after this tragedy. That is his attempt. He needs to hold together his family. This event happens and everyone falls apart, most especially his wife. And this takes place in Pennsylvania as well. And they speak, and this is true too. My great grandparents spoke Pennsylvania Dutch, which is the language the Amish speak. They spoke English. They'd only been in the country since the early 1700s, but they lived in an enclave where Pennsylvania Dutch was still spoken. Little place called Pine Grove, Pennsylvania. And it's that has always fascinated me. How people can, even though their ancestors came over, in their late 1600s, early 1700s, they still retain their native tongue. It's how, their culture is just by living in these little communities where that's the language everyone speaks. Pennsylvania Germans. So that they're speaking Pennsylvania Dutch, and I don't know Pennsylvania Dutch. I just use some phrases in that story, to give it some color, I guess.
Now introduce us to Robert. What's he like, and is he Amish?
No, he is not. That's what's interesting. He is not. No. He is, I guess he would be a Lutheran, but that's not mentioned in the story. He's, everyone loves Robert because Robert is good and decent. He's a man in that he provides and cares for his family. His grandchildren adore him. The entire community loves this man. He made a bunch of money, Being an independent coal miner, the big companies would go in, they'd mine the mines, and then he would go in after them and clean up what they missed. He made a ton of money, has his nice big house that he bought, and then he retires and becomes a school janitor. He's that kind of guy. He doesn't care about all this stuff. He builds this nice home for his wife. And she's fragile. She's very fragile emotionally. She's not cooking with both burners. You know what I'm saying? She's just said there was something happened to her life as well, which kind of makes people, things that happen to you that, you are completely, they completely affect you. They dictate, your future behaviors in a sense, because you're always remembering that thing. And if it's not a good thing, you need to cleanse yourself of it. Especially if it, seems to tell you you're not worthy.
Yes.
If you're hearing that voice, you need to shut it down.
Yeah, I know 100%. Now, without giving the story away, and I just had two more questions, and then I want to talk about your blogging. What is Robert praying for without giving the story away?
Oh my gosh, I can't remember. I can't remember.
Okay,
I can't remember.
What?
Oh, I know what it is. I know what it is. I think he is praying. He is praying for healing, for peace. Because of this event, it's just shaken everyone to the core, and that's what he's praying for.
Okay, what have you been hearing? Well, tell me again. You said Pennsylvania. What time does the story take place, and what have readers been saying about the short story? It sounds very interesting to me. Robert's Prayer.
Well, that story, Robert's Prayer, takes place in the 1940s. It's during World War II. Okay, so that's when that takes place. And I'm not sure what readers think of Robert's Prayer. I had one person told me they thought it was depressing, but I don't think it's depressing. I mean, yeah, but because bad things happen to everyone. It's what do you do with it? Do you sit there and get mad and hate on other people, including God, because this bad thing happened? Or do you try to look for a learning experience in it? And that was something that I had to deal with when my son died. What was I going to take away? I couldn't wallow.
Yes.
I couldn't do that. That would have been against his character, and nothing would have been accomplished.
Bless you. Who designed your book covers, Lori? And what was it like working with your book cover designer?
Well, my book cover designer is a guy I worked with forever and a day. I met him when I was working as a Beltway Bandit company. We supported NASA headquarters. We did public relations and all that sort of stuff. Helped out with the public affairs aspect of the astrophysics division. And he worked in the design shop. So that's where I met him way back in the 90s. His name is Dave, and Dave designed that cover. I have worked with him for so long that I don't even have to communicate really. He just kind of knows. And it's so easy. The publisher had, provided some book covers, and I really didn't like them. So I went with my guy, and I was very happy with the cover design.
Okay. Now, how did you become the accidental blogger?
Well, I never intended to become a blogger. And because I'm writing a novel, again, you have to create a platform. And so I just said, well, I can use my journalism background and create this blog. So it is The Accidental Blogger, and it kind of plays on the book, The Accidental Tourist, if you remember that.
Yes.
Yes. So that's how that came to be. I haven't written a blog in probably a year now. I need to take a break from it. Because the blog dealt with overcoming tragedy. And after a while, you just want I needed a break. So I don't know what I'm going to be doing with that, but there's 90 blogs. For 3+ years, I put out probably 2 or 3 blogs a month. And then I do a monthly letter called Something to Chew On. That's whatever topic crosses my mind. That is I enjoy writing that. It's fun. So,
Okay.
and then again, I've just, I wrote the sequel to Always Think of Me. And so,
Yes.
that's what I'm working on that now and playing around with an idea on, this third novel.
Okay. I definitely want to get to what you're working on now. Who are some of your favorite authors, Lori, and how has their work impacted you as a writer?
Well, I have always, always, always loved To Kill a Mockingbird. It's on my website. I mean, I believe that is one of the most beautiful stories ever written. I truly do. They're tough topics, especially, there's a lot of stuff going on, but a lot of those messages in that book are totally relevant today. And it is it's a loss of innocence type of coming of age story where the little character Scout realize, oh my goodness, she lives in a little bubble and out there is evil.
Yeah.
She thought she saw her town and its people as being basically good and then realizes, no, some of them aren't so good. They're full of bias and they're, hating on people because of how they look or how they behave. It's a huge learning experience for her. And those types of stories have always appealed to me. So that would be, I would say, in fact, I just finished reading it again.
Oh, okay.
I've only read it a million times, but it's funny. Every time I read it, I get something out of it. And you know what? And Denise, there isn't I love the way that book is because you're transported to a different place in a different time with these funny little characters in some ways. There's no shoot 'em up. There's none of that. There's not all this tension, a whodunit. And I wonder sometimes, maybe this thought has crossed your mind, are people no longer interested in these stories that rely heavily on characters? Instead of the formulaic types of things that always ends up on the bestseller list, good beach reads. I read them too. I just finished one. I love those books too, but I guess it's the literature,
Yes.
do people even read that anymore? I
Think
don't
so.
know.
I think so. I think there's still literary writers out here. I think so. They've never been as popular. They certainly were generations ago, but not people just want stuff quick, 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 quick now.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I want on that same vein, what writing process, Lori, do you follow? Do you start with outlines, character sketches? How do you take a blank page and start developing a story?
A lot of it happens in my mind, like I'm pacing right now and that's what I do. I do a lot of pacing and I will do a brief, character sketch of the characters. I don't really do an outline because I'd rather let the characters dictate how things go. I have something in mind. Don't get me wrong. Like with Always Think of Me, there's certain things are definitely must happen. So I kind of build the activity around these events that I know have to happen in order to tell the story.
Okay. Can you share, as we start to come to the close of today's show, and definitely want to talk about what you're working on now, but before that, can you share 3 to 4 steps that you have taken that you personally have found to be effective at getting the word out about your stories and your books? And then I have a piggyback question I want to ask you
You
next
know
after.
what? I don't know if I can offer 5. Well, if you're
Oh, 3 to 4.
every
Sure, sure. Let-
an author has to have a website, has to have
Okay,
that.
okay.
They also have to have some sort of thing, at least initially, to get people interested in you. And then when you publish a book, I'll tell you what, go to the Bookstagram community and get them to read your book. They write awesome, or not awesome, but truthful reviews. Some people will like your book. Some people will love your book. You know what I'm saying? But that's what I found to be the most effective, is going out and really devoting yourself to do more marketing. And that's what I learned with Always Think of Me. You really have to, budget marketing and get your name out there as much as you possibly can. Because
And
like I said, there's a million people out there.
yeah, you were a journalist, and I'm thinking this, and I wonder how many other listeners as well might think similarly. Um, I would think you'd have media contacts as a journalist, even if it's just the papers you work with, a local journal, newspaper, magazines, journals, etc. You work with, that they would say, "Oh, don't you worry about it, Lori. We'll cover your story. We'll do a feature interview on you and get it out."
You know what?
Is
I don't
that
know anyone. When I was a journalist, that was years ago. So all those folks are retired, and
I got you.
you see what I'm saying? And then I was, a public relations or public affairs type of a consultant for almost 18 years, something like that with NASA. So I really got out of the media community.
Okay,
And
let me.
okay, go ahead.
No. You go ahead. You finish.
Well, and then, when I was a journalist, I was covering Capitol Hill and again, boring coal mining regulations. And it was when I started, I was in small newspapers. So that worked okay. You could have maybe parlayed that, but I don't know folks in the media community. I just don't.
Let me ask you this. This was a next question. I attended a writers conference years ago, and I covered some on book marketing, and I said, send press releases, and there was somebody there who had worked with newspapers. They said they're really not as effective as they used to be because
Mm-hmm.
journalists get so many
Mm-hmm.
press releases.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say to not send them?
I know that oops. Hi, Denise.
I'm still here.
Oh, okay. I heard music, so I didn't know what happened.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't either.
um, I don't know. My publicist, no, I don't think publisher wrote a press release, but I don't think it was picked up. Yeah, probably not. I think you need to try to get on podcasts, talk with people, get out into the community to readers, where readers gather, that sort of thing. Yeah,
Okay.
I do. Yeah.
Now, tell us about as we wrap up, tell us about the new books that you are working on, and let us know when they might be ready to hit the market.
Oh my goodness, Denise. I don't know when it'll be ready. The second book is called Second Chance Highway, and
Okay.
it follows Ginny as she goes out to reconcile with her mother, which is the source of her issues. And this is something that TC urged her to do. She would never become whole if she walked around, with her festering unforgiveness.
Okay.
So that's what it's called. And you meet, a bunch of other crazy characters. I like characters. I've had fun creating characters. And you meet Ginny's mother and you get a better idea of who Jacob is. He has he has his own separate voice. So it's called Second Chance Highway, and it's now with an editor, and I'm not really sure when it will come out, but I think I'm probably go the self-publishing route. So it'll be a lot faster than was with Always Think of Me.
Second Chance Highway. Love that. Love that title. Where can off the shelf listeners get a copy of your book?
Well, they can go to Amazon, of course. They can go to Barnes and Noble. They can go to what's that? Books a Million. That's
Okay.
online. That's where it's easiest to get the book.
And do you have any upcoming speaking engagement that our listeners could support you? And then also let us know where you are on social media.
Yes, I am on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Those are the three platforms I post with. I'm on X, but I don't post anything there really. What else? No, and I don't have any speaking engagements coming
Okay,
up.
okay. We have had the absolute pleasure of speaking with Miss Lori Keesey this morning. She has a long writing career. Again, as we shared at the start of the story, she wrote copy for newspapers and regional and trade magazines for more than 40 years, and she has 20 years, and she's also worked with NASA and public outreach. She's got a Bachelor of Science in Journalism from the University of Maryland, and she is the author of the book Always Think of Me. And then she's working on, it's with an editor, Second Chance Highway. And I loved her talking about Always Think of Me, and her short stories, which sound like they could be developed into great novels, The Note and Robert's Prayer. And I encourage you to visit Lori online at her website, lorikeesey.com. And that's LORIKEESEY.com. And again, that's LORIKEESEY.com. And as I always tell you, if you came in, you had things to do this morning, you came in late, no worries. After the show finishes streaming, you can listen to it in its entirety. Once it finishes streaming, you can listen to it on Google Play. You can listen to it YouTube. You can listen to it on Spreaker, which is an iHeartRadio station platform, and iHeartRadio is pretty big. And you can also listen to it. Did I say Apple? I mean, it's on so many different places that you can find off the shelf books. We want to thank Lori for being here with us, taking time out of her day to share with her stories. You come up with some great story ideas. I'm telling you, and I hope maybe one day you will consider maybe taking one of your stories and trying to see if you can develop it into a film.
Well,
But yeah,
Denise, you'll be the first person I let know.
you
Okay.
have great story ideas,
I
and so
really enjoy talking with you.
Yeah, and enjoyed you as well. Thank you so much. And to our listeners, as I always tell you, and I mean this, it's the truth. You are just incredible. You are absolutely phenomenal. Go out and create a wonderful day for yourself. See you back here next Saturday on Off the Shelf Books. Tell book lovers everywhere to tune in to Off the Shelf Books. Lori, I'll send you a link to the show when it finishes streaming. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.